Hey, it's Skelemystyk. Today, I'm going to talk about all the pretty flowers in the spiral and how to...
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Oh, come on, guys. Let me tell you what this special message is going to be. I'm not going to talk about boring crap like that. I would never talk about boring crap like that so much as I can help it. Today, what I want to talk about is all the rumors, all the talk, all the things that are going on that are kind of negative about King's Isle being a dying game and how it's not going to last and how it's changed from what it was and it's just not as much fun anymore and all of those kind of subjects lumped into one. Guys, let's talk about it for a minute. If you think about it, it is not just King's Isle or Wizard101's fault. I mean, they might be a dying game. It's possible. They might be losing players. It's true. In fact, they might not. That's not that they might. They are losing players. It's true. But we've got to look at why that might be. It isn't just King's Isle. It isn't just the content. It isn't just the company. It isn't just about the money. Guys, it's about the players too. Stop and think about it for a minute. It used to be, way back in the day, you could go to the Commons and hang out with your friends and have a good time and talk about the game and talk about maybe what you were doing and talk about school and talk about, you know, I don't know, your sports or anything like that. These days, when you go to the Commons, it's hex this and deck that and a lot of other much nastier things that people are saying as much as they can, getting around the filter to do. I personally, that kind of talk has a time and a place, and it is not on a game like this in the Commons where everybody can see it, everybody can get an eye on your business and all that whatnot. King's Isle might be a dying game and losing players, but why is it losing players? It is not just King's Isle's fault. It used to be, and I think this is true back in the day, back in the beginning of this, back in the 2007s and 8s and 9s range, that the main demographic for Wizard101 was literally little kids. People 12 and under, maybe even people 10 and under. You know, little kids who came to play the game for the wonder and the exploration, the cool magic, you know, the cool effects, the awesome looking characters, the cool looking pets, and all those things. They came to it because at the time, Wizard101 was pretty much a groundbreaking game. I mean, Warcraft was out there then, and it was quite the game too, but even now, Warcraft is really stilted more towards the full adult audience. It really is. And Wizard101 came in and said, hey, you know, we're going to take up the slack. We're going to be for the little kids. We're going to do things that little kids think are really, really cool and really, really magical and really, really fun. And they did. And it worked greatly. For the first few years, King's Isle was, and Wizard101 was, you know, slam, bam, growing like they had a pituitary problem. Okay, let's look at it now. Back in the day, whenever they started, their main demographic, their main player base was pretty much little kids. 12 and under, 10 and under, you know, maybe even 7 and 8. These days, I think that has changed. And there are several reasons why I think that has changed. And because that has changed, the game has changed. Anytime you change a major ingredient of something, the final product changes. Okay, we used to have little kids. I think that our main player demographic now is preteens and teens. And that means instead of being 12 and under, we're talking about 12 and up, 12 to 18. Now, little kids, naturally, you know, they're not thinking about what boys and girls do and what a boy has got and what a girl has got and how those things mix together and all that. In short, they're not thinking about sex or anything of a sexual nature. They're not. Okay? As a general rule, adults, well, as I said, as a general rule, adults don't do that either. I mean, in a public setting, they don't. Okay? On a kids game, they definitely don't. Whenever this game started, we had little kids, and maybe they found some of it tough, so they were like, You know, hey, older brother Bob, can you come help me with this? Can you start a character and help me get through this? This is a really tough part. Or mom or dad, can you play this game? By the way, that's how I got sucked into this. Was, I'm having a really hard time with this. Can you help me? And mom or dad or older brother Bob or older sister Sally or whatever, you know, maybe even grandma and grandpa started a character and started playing to help the little kids do what they needed to do. And those little kids, they weren't focused on sex. They weren't focused on all those things that are being said in the comments now with the hex and the dex and the other things that are getting around the filter. They weren't focused on those things. But I think that along the lines here, our main player demographic has changed to those teens and preteens who really do focus on that kind of thing. They're at the age right now where those hormones are a changing them. And that's about all they're thinking about is sex and anything sex related and how to get it and where to get it and how to get it and all that stuff. Because if you look, just look, if you listen to a conversation in the commons these days, even if you shuffle out the sexually natured stuff and listen to the other things, it's stuff that teenagers talk about. You know, school and classes that they really hate and teachers that they really loathe and sports that they want to play and other video games that they would really be interested in and things like that. I think that it isn't King's Isle and or Wizard 101 that has changed. I think it's the player base that has changed. And when the player base changes, the atmosphere and nature of the game will change. And that is what has happened. Okay? That's just one part of it. So far as the sex issue goes. That's why you're seeing so much of that in the commons these days. Now, what to do about that? Well, King's Isle, again, I've said it 100 times, so I'll say it 101. King's Isle is a business. Sure, they're putting out an entertaining game and trying to get as many people interested as possible and give them something to do, but they are doing that in exchange for money. Whenever something threatens that, okay, these people, you can blame a corporation and blame a business and like that all you want, but the corporation and the business is all made up of people. And all those people are trying to feed their kids, pay their mortgages, buy their toys or whatever things they buy, trying to make a living, trying to make a profit. Okay? It's run by people who are trying to do those things. And whenever something threatens that livelihood or someone threatens that income, they do what they feel they need to do to try to put a stop to it. Unfortunately, some of the bannings that have happened, I don't really feel have been fair and legit. However, whenever you're catering to millions of people, and they still do have millions of players, they still do. Whenever you're catering to millions of players, it's really, really hard to sort out that one or two people, or maybe even that 100 or 500 people out of that million that are making the trouble. So they instituted that filter that checks the chat, that keeps an eye on what people are saying, that flags certain words, and will auto-mute people if someone spam reports because they can't risk it. They cannot risk things happening en masse like have already happened in part. For instance, that 22-year-old fool who was luring kids to take inappropriate photos in exchange for gifts. That's one incidence of where an adult kind of screwed up the whole program too. But regardless of that, sorry, I had to get a drink there. Regardless of that, King's Isle cannot afford to let that kind of thing go on. Yes, they like their game. Yes, they like their players when they can. But when they can't, they have to look at that business first. They have to look about, hey, where's that income coming from? Are we going to take a major lawsuit because we didn't do something and someone got hurt? Okay, they have to look at that. We as players have to look at that. We need to not only, sure, we need to hold King's Isle responsible for policing that, but we need to hold ourselves and all the people who are causing this stuff responsible. Now, I'm not saying when you see somebody saying hex in the comments, you should automatically go and slam bam mass report. But I am saying you should, hey, you know, that kind of stuff isn't right for here. You ought not to be doing it. And then if they get rude about it, and they probably will, then say something, you know, then put a report in. Hey, this is what happened. Here's a copy of the chat logs. Copy the chat logs whenever this is going on. You really need to do that. That's important for any kind of conversation that goes on, really any kind of conversation that goes on in the game. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that King's Isle is becoming a dying game, is that parents and grandparents, they see this stuff going on in the commons. Okay, maybe their first grandkid made it through all that and has outgrown the game and gone on. Maybe they've got other grandkids. And they see what's going on. The grandparents see what's going on. Their parents see what's going on in the commons these days. And they don't want little Bobby or little Jenny playing. Because, you know, they don't want them hearing all of this stuff. I think that's one reason that not only has the player base, the amount of the player base lessened, but that's why we had a shift in the demographic. Parents aren't letting so many or as many of their little kids get on this game as they used to. And that's also why it doesn't feel like it used to. The game used to have a lot of fun, a lot of innocence, a lot of adventure. And guys, really, it isn't just the game, it's the players. Okay, now I could rattle on about this forever, but I want to end this as part one of this little, I'm going to make this sort of a mini-series because I've got a lot to say about this. And I just want you guys to start considering why it seems like King's Isle is a dying game. Why things don't seem like they used to be. Sure, there's content involved, and we'll talk about that in another episode of this. But for now, think about that. This is the sex part of it. Next time I'll be covering the society part of it. But like I said, I can get really, really long-winded. I don't want to have an hour-and-a-half video altogether. I want to split this up to, you know, give you guys time to digest what I'm talking about. Think about it. By all means, let's make this a conversation. Let's talk about this. If you have an opinion or a question or a good bit of information, by all means, I encourage you to put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. As well, if you will, subscribe to me. I would like to talk to you a lot more. Share this video. Like this video. Get it out there about what's going on. Until next time, this is Skelemystyk reminding you that whatever else you do, always love the game. Peace. Hey, what's up, Skelemystyk? Welcome back to Sex, Society, and the Spiral, Part 2. In the last video, I talked about some of the sexual aspect of things and what's going on with the players and what's going on with the player base and why things don't seem like they used to be. This time I want to talk more about society.